I don't know about you, when I'm looking for a plumber, I like to read my reviews. HomeAdvisor.com gave me some reviews on our sponsor, Art of Plumbing. Called them. They arrived on time. Immediately found the plumbing issue and fixed it right the first time. I called them last year and it was great. I called them again this year because I had a problem again. They came out, they fixed the problem. They even gave me solutions to help stop the problem in the future at 541-9405.
Perspectives change with broken strings and worn out souls. Years ago and some with wings. Some are old, some undersold. To grow we need to rely on and try on some other people's shoes. Some other people's shoes.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. Of course, you know I'm your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is, I don't know if it's still a holiday people celebrate, but I know when I was a kid, it was one that we kind of would play tricks on each other. So happy April Fool's Day, if that's such a thing. But today, we're not going to fool around. In fact, you better be careful because we've brought in law enforcement in today. So be on your best behavior. In fact, my next guest, if you'll help me welcome him in, has over 30 years of experience, 10 of which being a police detective. In fact, he still consults on cases and teaches our law enforcement agencies in the great state of California how to detect liars. So that in itself begs some questions, doesn't it? Help me welcome in my guest, retired police detective, Paul. Paul, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, Neil. Thank you very much.
Awesome. I'm so glad that we get to sit together today. I know our paths have crossed multiple times in a variety of different ways, but I'm excited to sit with you today to find out more about law enforcement, your role as a detective, and just kind of how our view of law enforcement maybe needs to change a lot in a lot of respects in this country. And so we'll get into that, I'm sure. But the first question we got to definitely have answered, and that is this, is Paul, what size shoes do you wear?
13.
13. All right.
Yep.
And is there a certain brand or style you like more than another?
You know, here's the thing. I don't wear shoes so much as I wear a cast on both of my feet. I mean, from years of being on my feet, both my feet are literally flat foot. So I always build a New Balance. I spend a lot of money on my tennis shoes, and I have the hard arch supports underneath. So, I mean, I lace this tight, arch support, and I'm fine. Anything else, I can't even walk around it before my feet start to fall apart, especially my right foot, which was always my door-kicking foot. I mean, there's like a million little fractures in the foot. So, yeah, New Balance is definitely the way I find I have to go.
Well, that's good. I mean, New Balance also kind of maybe dates you a little bit. I mean, if I'm going to project a little bit, right?
Yeah, sorry, I don't have Air Jordans or anything.
Yeah, that's okay. You know,
I don't mind being dated. I don't mind being dated. I am dated.
That's great, right? So Paul, what on earth possessed you to think one day or somewhere along the journey, you know what? I want to go into law enforcement. I want to become a police officer, and then later on becoming a detective. What was that journey like?
You know, it's kind of an interesting question. Why do people do certain things? I think I told you I was at the dentist today, and I found a really great dentist, and they're working on my teeth, and I'm laying there in the chair, as one does, with this gal sticking her fingers in my mouth, and I'm thinking, because I have nothing else to do, I wonder why a person decides they want to spend the rest of their adult life sticking their fingers in people's mouths. And then it occurs to me, you know, thank God they do. Thank God there are people out there that just for whatever reason, either through intelligent design or whatever we want to come up with, somehow that person got selected with the desire to be a police officer, or in this case, a dental hygienist. So think of all the jobs that you would never do, that we would all be pretty bad off if somebody didn't do it. And certainly police work is along those lines. As far as how it came to me, I think, well, first off, of course, the shows. You know, Adam 12 was a kid, Hill Street Blues in my high school years. So one of the biggest influences on me was my father retired fairly early, in his mid-50s, right about the time I was in the 19, 20-year age. And I just looked at him and I said, wait a minute. So You don't have to work and you're still going to get paid. And he said, well, yeah, it's called a pension. Now, he was an aerospace engineer. But I started looking around to see where the heck I could find a really, really good pension type job. And I found out that police have just about the best pension out there. And I dreamed, so I'm going to get this job. I'm going to work till I'm 50. Then I'm going to retire. And I'm never going to work again. Every day is going to be a Saturday. And then I got to 50 and I thought, well, I could do a couple more. Then I got to 52 and I finally did say, okay, this is it. I'm retired. 52 years of age and I'm done. And I thought, wow, now I can do absolutely nothing. And that lasted about 2 months before I realized I suck at doing nothing. I've been spending now the last 30 plus years of my life out there doing something really, really purposeful. And I think that was one of the big things that got to me. I mean, I went there for the money. I went there for the pension. But once I got there and I realized I'm actually helping people, I'm actually doing a lot of good. And then the great jazz for me in the whole thing was when I realized if I put a little bit extra thought into this, a little bit of creativity, a little bit of imagination, and really think outside the box, which is highly encouraged in my profession, I could do a lot of good. I could solve a lot of problems. And that just started turning into a big motivator for me. And then detectives was always the goal for me. Even when I was in patrol, guys used to call me the field detective because I always did extensive follow-up on all my cases. I figured if I'm going to take a report, I'm going to take an arrest report. If someone's a victim of a crime, if there's any way possible I can figure out who did this and then go arrest that person, I'm going to do that because that's problem solving. And I just found that I really enjoyed problem solving. So now in retirement, I'm the worst retired guy ever. I've got a whole bunch of different jobs, including, as you mentioned, I teach interview and interrogation to police detectives throughout the state of California. So I guess that answers your question, right?
No, I think it does. Yeah. I guess I'm always fascinated by the why in life, right? I mean, why do you do what you do? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? I think it.
And
Go
to
ahead,
that point, so when we teach interview and interrogation, why is one of the questions we tell people never to ask. Because the truth is people aren't very self-evaluative and people aren't really sure why they do things. We do what we want to do. We enjoy things because we enjoy them. But do we, I mean, you could sit there and be, the perpetual 5-year-old, but why? But why? But why? And eventually you get to the point where like, I just do, okay? I don't know why. How much do we really know about why we do the things that we do?
Yeah. I guess that's probably why I got in trouble a lot. There's that word again, the why word, is I was always asking the why, right? Why is this happening? Why are we doing that? Why is so-and-so, over here? I have 3 siblings that are all older, and man, I was the proverbial, I'm going to narc on you and I'm going to, tell on you because I need to know why you're doing that. And I need to know the ins and the outs of that. So that, anyway, that's just funny.
I think the value in the why is for certain people of certain personality types. And I'm a big advocate, by the way, of 16 personalities. I don't know if you've ever done one of those profiles. Everyone should Google that and take the test. It takes you 10 minutes and you wind up with a profile. I got mine in high school. I remember the high school counselor sat me down and oh my God, he was acting like I had cancer. I mean, he says, Paul, life is going to be very hard for you. And it turned out my personality profile comes out in letters and mine is INTJ, which is 1% of the population. The mantra of an INTJ is fear no truth. And INTJs are fine with rules, but we want to know that there's purpose for this rule. So maybe that's the importance of why, to say, okay, is there a reason why we're doing this? And you can solve problems by working that out. And I think that's one of our big problems today is that we don't think things through enough. We don't reason the cause and effect of things to figure out the general consequence and find the solutions.
Yeah, no, I think you're onto something there. I know I've taken many of personality profiles. I haven't heard of that one, but the Enneagram's a big one nowadays. We do one at my company, Strength by Strategies. Everyone's a color. There's 4 different colors. So there's that one.
Yeah, the 16 personality is actually one of the oldest. It's been around since the 40s. It's I think it was the Briggs Strata or something like that. I can't remember the actual who came up with it. The idea was that there's 4 separate personality traits, and there's a combination of each. 4 times 4 being 16, so there's a total of. It's pretty eye opening when you read it because it answers a lot of your why questions for you.
That's great. I'll have to look into that for sure. We'll see if we can find that and maybe link that for our listeners for sure.
Just Google it. 16 personalities. Boom, pops right up.
Boom, pops right up. We'll do it.
Yep.
So we talked about kind of why you got involved, obviously the pension, and then, along the way, money obviously comes with that. But then, this idea that you're really helping people. So that leads into my next thing that I'm curious about. Like, hardest part of being a detective would be what?
Well, I think it's managing the caseload. I mean, when you watch these cop shows, it's one crime, and that's all they're doing is working on one crime. That never really happens in the real world. When you work in property crimes world, you're dealing with 150 to 200 open cases at a time. In crimes against persons, the numbers are a little lower. Maybe you're 20 cases open at a time, and you're doing several things at once. It's a fantastic job, detectives, for the ADD, because you'll start off the day and you're typing a narrative, and then the phone rings, a detective from another agency, and, hey, have you heard about this guy? Yeah, I know that guy. Let me look up some stuff about that. And then there's another thing going on, and somebody says, oh, we got to do a search warrant. Oh, you hit that search warrant. And then there's this other case. Oh, there's some information on this. And you talk to 5 people. Next thing you know, 4 hours later, you're sitting at your desk thinking, what was that name? Oh, yeah, typing the report. Back to typing the report. I mean, it's just, you're constantly doing multiple things, multitasking. I was subject of, I wouldn't say ridicule, but people thought it was funny. I always, when I was at work, forwarded my desk line to my cell phone because I personally hate voicemail. I hate sitting down in the middle of the day and it's like, you have 17 unheard messages. So I always just forwarded right to my cell phone while I was working. And I'd be in the middle of a search warrant. Phone would ring. It's a victim wanting to know what's going on in the case. I'd stand there while I'm tearing through boxes, talking away, get it done. For me, it was an organizational thing. So yeah, it's the juggling, the constant juggling. And one of the things I did to keep myself sane, and I think anyone who deals with caseloads, I know, in your business, you probably have a lot of that kind of stuff too, is I create a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet is all my open cases, where they are and what I need to do on them. And I look at that spreadsheet at the beginning of every day, and then I looked at it before going home every night. That was the only way I could prevent myself in the middle of watching television at home saying, wait a minute, oh no, I was supposed to call so-and-so. It's just kind of keeping it organized.
No, I think that's great. Again, giving us some insight, giving us some perspective inside, kind of the mind of a police detective. Because, Paul, to be honest with you, I mean, ever since we've known each other, that facet of your life has always fascinated me because, in my background, in my real job, of working hard and working to find people in very similar ways, non-law enforcement ways, we'll just leave it at that. But this idea that it's not like what we see on TV. And I know we know that maybe subconsciously, but now consciously we're like, no, that's not real. That's not real. That's not real life. So
yeah,
with the good, there's always the bad, right? So is there any kind of negative or any type of negative stuff that's occurred to you? And if so, if you're willing to share, obviously I know you can't maybe go into details about specific cases or people per se, but has there been some negativity with you? And then with that negativity, how has the public treated you? Because I still feel like people in general have a very negative view of law enforcement.
Well, and it's getting worse every day. So I get asked a lot, and I've given this matter a lot of thought. What is the problem that people have with the police? And if I get a little eggheady on you here for a bit, a couple of things I think is what it comes down to. First off, we exist outside of nature. Okay, the natural order of things is predator and prey. The predator may be predator for this person, maybe prey for somebody else. They're like a food chain. The shoplifter might be preyed upon by the burglar, who might be preyed upon by the robber. Anyone who has an aspect of their life where they are criminally inclined is a predator. The largest group of people is the prey category of people, which, people like you would be in, just honest, hardworking people who mean no harm to anybody else and just want to go around and do their thing and would never, ever want to victimize anyone. That's the natural order of things. That's the way it works in the animal kingdom. That's the way things work. Well, along comes this new outside of nature category, the protector. And you look at it from the predator standpoint, well, this guy's just annoying because, hey, I'm doing my thing, man. I take what I want to take. I kill who I want to kill. I do what I want to do. What's this person who's not even involved sticking their nose into this whole thing? Why is this person jamming me up? What does he care? He's not even involved. Then you got the victim. You think, well, the victim, they'd be really great. They'd really love you. Yeah, except the victim's kind of thinking, what's up with this guy? Because I'm not so sure about this. Oh, yeah, he's going to take a bullet for me. Sure he is. Well, what's in it for him? And there's a little bit of suspicion. And then, there's a Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, who's written several books, The Bulletproof Mind, on killing, things like that. He put forward a theory some years ago that's kind of a big deal in law enforcement called the sheep, the sheepdog, and the wolf. And he contrasted the role of protectors in society as being akin to that of the sheepdog, and where the predators would be the wolf, and normal people would be the sheep. Now, of course, some people took offense at that and said, well, I'm not, just because I'm not a criminal, I'm a sheep. He wasn't saying that sheep in the sense of being stupid or, simple-minded. He was just saying that just generally good-natured, no inclination to harm anyone else, which is what the vast majority of people are. So there's some parts of it that's good. One of the things that's interesting that goes towards my concept, if you think about the sheepdog, by name, you would say, well, it's half sheep, half wolf. No, it's a dog. It's much closer to being a wolf than it is to being a sheep. And by nature, that's kind of what it has to be, because the wolf's got to be scared of the sheepdog. All right? The bad guy's got to be scared of the cop. All right? Everyone says, well, why can't the cops all just act like Nordstrom sales clerks? Now, I'm not trashing Nordstrom's. I love going there when I can afford it. Their customer service is amazing. You can be a complete jerk to them, and they will act like you're the favorite customer they've ever had. They're highly trained, very skilled, and not the sort of person you want to call at 2 o'clock in the morning when somebody's kicking your front door and now that person's heading up the stairs. You want them to send somebody that the bad guy is afraid of, kind of like the bully's bully. And we are more like the wolf than we are the sheep. I once described law enforcement, your average cop, as being a cunning and gifted liar with an aptitude for violence, whose greatest and probably only redeeming quality really is that we are willing to live by a code written by others. We're willing to live a life where we will follow a set standard of rules set forth by other people. And this is how we're going to conduct ourselves, whether we agree or not. We often don't. I mean, that's a big misconception. People get upset about the laws. There's a lot of trivial laws, all right? There's a lot of laws out there that cops think are stupid. People go, that's hypocrisy. How could you not believe in the laws? Well, this isn't a police state. We don't make the laws. If we did make the laws, by the way, sidebar, there'd be half as many laws with twice the consequences. So our thing is like traffic enforcement. Do cops believe in speeding tickets and running, slow roll on stop sign stuff and all this stuff? No. If cops were in charge of traffic, here's the rule would be: don't cause an accident. If you do cause an accident, you lose your driver's license. Simple. And we would rather spend our time looking for the really, really bad guys, the robbers, the rapists, the murderers, and not worry about all the other stuff. So, it's not really our inclination to be spending all this time nuzzling the sheep around the herd. We'd rather be going after the wolf. But we have to accept that we don't make the laws. The laws are made by the populace, in Dave Grossman's analogy, the sheep. And we have to do what they tell us to do. We have to enforce the laws that they tell us to do. And of course, then they get mad at us. But that's just the way it works. So the prey look at us and think, I don't know. These guys are kind of big. They're kind of scary. They say they're on my side, but aren't they really just a bunch of guys who are just using the badge and the gun to go around and killing people and all that? So it's hard for people to really envision it, because you have to understand what we're talking about here is very primal. We're talking about brainstem stuff. We're talking about the triple F, the freeze, flight, or fight mode. All species have this at a very core level. Moths have it. No species survives more than one generation if you don't have a fundamental core of this. And it's all triggered by this fear. Very elemental to us. We're always looking at everything. Should I be afraid of this? So it's very hard to overcome that. When something comes up that's strange and goes against our biology, the next thing that was developed in our brains is the limbic system of our brains. And the limbic system of our brain is where we get emotions. So when we talk to people and we want to highly motivate them, we can talk about what they should be afraid of, and we can stir their emotions. And we kind of short circuit right around the higher part of the brain, talking about reason and logic. And that gets me to the second point. We are so thoughtless as a society. And I mean that in the sense that we just don't think. We don't think about things, okay? We don't know how to reason cause and effect, for example. In fact, we're so bad at reasoning cause and effect, we can mistake cause for effect. All right? Now, one of the big issues right now, it's being pointed out, that there is disproportionately negative interactions between the police and people of color. Well, there you go. Proof of racism on the part of the police. But that is actually mistaking cause for effect. Let me give you a quick example. The most basic form of cause and effect ruling is fire burns. Don't touch fire. Okay? You touch it, you get hot, you burn. Well, imagine that you go ahead and put your hand on that stupid fire anyway, and now your hand's on fire. And because you can't get that the fire is causing your hand to be in pain, what you're doing is you look at your hand and say, oh, look at that. The pain sensation of my hand is causing a fire. Well, let me ask you, Neil, if you haven't fallen asleep on me yet, what would you do
I'm with you.
if your hand's on fire and you've convinced yourself that the problem here is not the fire, but the pain in your hand? What would you do to solve that problem?
I would, well, if the pain's in my hand, I would probably put it in cold water.
No, but here's the thing. Cold water puts out the fire.
Oh, true.
But you've convinced yourself the cause is not the fire. You've convinced yourself the cause is the pain. So what do you do?
Get rid of the pain?
By taking what? Pain pills.
Yeah, maybe.
Right?
Yeah, some type of, yeah.
Yeah, you start popping pain pills. And the fire spreads and your whole body gets burned. Now, why then don't we talk about, when it comes to negative interaction between police and people of color, why don't we talk about the cause, the fire? Well, to me, the bottom line is this. There's a hell of a lot of people making a lot of money selling pain pills. There is nobody going to make money off of putting out the fire. It's cause and effect, okay? The cause is not that black people and all people of color are having disproportionately negative interactions with law enforcement. The problem is that the people of color are disproportionately involved in crime. Why are they disproportionately involved in crime? Well, because they're let's say, for example, the scenario of a black American who is descended from slaves, generationally living in poverty. Okay, this is a person who doesn't believe in society, doesn't really respect the country, because why would they? Would I, in their situation? I would say no. So they're angry, they're poor, they're disadvantaged, and so they have a greater tendency to get involved in crime. That's the fire. The economic disparity between people of color and white people is the fire. The cause is economic disparity. The effect is disproportionately involved in crime, and that effect, because we are downstream from the true cause, is disproportionately negative interactions between the police and people of color. Now, society is totally been hornswoggled by Colin Kaepernick, John Legend, who tweets out, all cops want to do is kill black people for no reason at all. Barack Obama, when he was president, he commissioned a panel with the instructions to prove that cops were racist. And they came back and said, here's the thing, they're not. And he said, well, what do you mean? Isn't a black man more likely to be shot by the police than a white man? Well, yeah, he's 2.5 times more likely. Well, there you go. Yeah, he's 3.5 times more likely to actually be trying to kill the cop. Well, isn't a black man more likely to be in prison than a white man? Yeah, he's 24 times more likely to be in prison than a white person. Well, there you go. Except he's 30 times more likely to be a murderer and 50 times more likely to be a violent criminal. So, not happening. Another thing for people to look up is a gentleman by the name of Roland Fryer. He's a Harvard University professor, and he is black, and he absolutely believes in cops are racist. And he decided to use, he's an economics professor, and he decided to use economic theory to prove it. And he looked at all the fact sets and all the data, and he disproved it. Now, not unique. You don't hear studies a lot about this stuff because they keep coming to the same conclusions, which is it's not happening. But most of them, they don't publish it. What Barack Obama did when given that information is he held a famous press conference, and he said, black people are 2.5 times more likely to be shot by the police, 24 times more likely to be in prison. That's all he said. He didn't say the other half of the numbers. Roland Fryer, and you can YouTube this, published anyway, which is why he's a personal hero of mine. He came to a conclusion, looking at the fact set, totally other than what he believed to be true, and he published anyway. You can YouTube it, listen to it for yourself. So it's been disproven, all right? But the problem is the plan. I mean, this is what's interesting to me. What would you say the plan is when you go around telling everybody that we're black, hate the police, right? During the last Super Bowl, Anquan Boldin played 2 videos, 2 different commercials that proved, according to this Inspire Change organization, that police officers get away with killing innocent black people. His proof of that was to provide 2 separate scenarios. In both of those scenarios, the police officer didn't get away with it, and one, the cop got sent to prison for 25 years, and in the other, the cop got sent to prison for 10 years. And what's interesting about that is neither of them would have been sentenced at all, given the circumstance of the event, had they not been cops. They were sent to prison because they had police expertise and should have done a better job. The guy who went to prison was the one who killed Anquan Boldin's cousin. He went to prison because he failed to identify himself as a police officer. Similarly to the female officer in Dallas, keep in mind, the victim's family pled for her not to have any sentence at all. But they said, not because she went into the wrong house, but because, again, she has police training. She should have known better. She should have given this person an opportunity. She should not have just opened fire. So the proof that cops are racist murderers and get away with killing black people is 2 cops who went to prison and only went to prison because they were cops. So I'm not thinking that case has been proven. But at the end of all this, what is it all about? What is the message here? If you're black, be violent towards the police. Hate the police. Run from the police. Fight with the police. Now, to paraphrase the only funny line from the movie The Interview, confirm you copy, attacking the cop is a bad plan. You know what cops do when they're afraid of you? Well, they shoot you. That's the whole thing. That's we testify in court. Officer, why did you shoot this man? Because I was afraid for my life. Charges dismissed. Thank you very much. So getting all these folks to be angry at the police, be violent towards the police, in my mind, that's selling a whole lot of pain medicine to the person whose hands on fire. That's not solving the problem. That's not solving the problem at all. It's making the problem worse, and I maintain these folks are not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly how much money is rolling in. And they're doing it intentionally to stoke the flames. And every single time, you had the case of the CD seller. I believe it was in Baton Rouge, I believe it was, where you had this guy. He was perennially standing in front of a market, and he was always selling CDs. And it was a pirated CD situation. And a citizen saw that he had a gun. He had pointed a gun at somebody. We don't know who he pointed the gun at. We don't know why. I'm going to guess, based on my experience, somebody probably tried to rob him. Somebody probably came over with a knife and tried to rob this guy. And he pulled out the gun, showed it to the guy. The guy split. Some citizen sees this, calls the cops. Okay. Cops get there. Now, this guy's got a felony. He probably shouldn't be in possession of a handgun, but he is. What's the consequence for that? Probably not that severe. Probably maybe parole violated if he was on parole and goes away for maybe a year. But this guy is listening to Barack Obama. This guy is listening to Colin Kaepernick. He's listening to John Legend. He's a black man with a gun. They flat out told him, cop's going to kill you for no reason at all. Thank you, John Legend, who said that like a dozen times in a tweet. So what does he do? Goes for the gun. What do the cops do? Well, they go through a use of force spectrum that is unprecedented under these circumstances. They use their commands. They use their body. They pepper spray him. They tackle him. They're actually on top of this guy. They're grabbing his hand. His hand is on the gun in his pocket. They're telling him, don't pull that gun out. One cop even puts a gun to the back of his head, says, dude, you pull that gun out, I'm going to shoot you. But he believes in his mind, cops are going to kill me anyway. I got to kill these cops or I'm going to die. Because he listened to these folks. He listened to these folks who tell him what you need to do if your hand is on fire is take a bunch of pain pills and maybe throw on some gasoline. What he could have done, and he'd be alive today if he did, is say, hey guys, my bad. I'm letting you know, I do have a gun. It's right here. I'm not going to touch it. Okay, I'll lay down on the ground, handcuffed. He'd face whatever charges. Okay? But they listen to these lies. They listen to this nonsense. And they're doing what they're told to do. Hate the cops, attack the cops, with inevitable results. And it may sound very derogatory to say this, but I think that when that happens, all these folks that are making all this money pouring gasoline on this fire are high-fiving each other. Yay, another case we can march on. More streets we can burn. And in the end, it's just got to come down to being thoughtful and solving the problem by finding out what the problem is. If 10 banks get robbed, and 8 of the bank robbers are black, and I do my job, I catch all 10 bank robbers, according to this, what we call logic, I'm a racist because I've arrested more black men for robbing banks than I have white people. Like I have any say or control whatsoever over the race of the person committing the crime. Like we sit in our car as the call is being put out and say, please let the suspect be a black person. Please let him be a black person. And let me assure you, that's the opposite of what we're doing. I guarantee you the opposite of what we're doing is that. And then we hear all these other, like anyone who's famous and black, they have to get their street cred. I was pulled over by the cops one time because I was a black man driving an expensive car. So they figured it must have been stolen. You know how many times that's actually happened? Try 0. You know why that 0 times happens? Because we don't suspect expensive cars have been stolen. Expensive cars don't get stolen. They have anti-theft devices on them. The only way they get stolen is if the person gets carjacked, and that goes out in a general broadcast, so we'd all know. And even then, all we'd have to do is just run the license plate. Black people in fancy cars are not getting pulled over. You don't get pulled over? Tweaker white dudes driving around an 85 Toyota Corolla, okay? Because those cars are so easy to steal. The Honda Accords, those older cars, that's what we look at and think is a stolen car, all right? It's perception becomes reality. It's confirmation bias, and it's people who have an agenda to make money off a problem and have no inclination whatsoever in making this problem any better. And that, I think, is how I look at it, is the whole problem that we're facing right now, is we need people to start caring about solving the problem and stop profiting off exacerbating the problem.
Well, I think you're right on with what you're saying, because I think for so long and for so many years, people have done exactly that. They want to make money off of things rather than coming up with a solution for it, because there's more greed in the world than anything else, right? And greed and power are really corrupt things, right? I mean, I personally think the greatest drug of all time is pride. And in pride comes with a lot of other, dangers. So, Paul,
pride goeth before the fall.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just said, pride goeth before the fall. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add in, if you wouldn't mind sharing, if you're able to share, is there anything as a police officer, law enforcement, detective, the many roles that you've served in, is there anything in particular that comes to mind that really scared you, maybe a case or a situation? Again, I don't know how many details you can give, but I'm curious.
Well, I've been around to many, many calls. I think the scariest situation, though, is when you're doing riot control. I served in Los Angeles County during the 92 riots. That's particularly scary situation. We had one in the Orange County city I wound up retiring from. We had, the retirement, the protest situations are always the same. One guy said something unnecessarily inflammatory, and then this other group is way overreacting to what the person said. So now we got a big screaming, yelling riot. We've got us in riot gear with one group on one side, another group on the other. We're trying to keep each other from attacking. Both of them are yelling and screaming at us, saying, you should be on our side. You should be on our side. And we're sitting there thinking, dude, we're the only ones who don't want to be here, okay? I mean, sometimes it's frankly how I feel about politics. Everyone's yelling and screaming at cops. It's like, yeah, we kind of don't like any of you. But so I had a situation one time where we're doing one of those things, and somebody was coming to It was an older man. He was coming in trying to get to the meeting that the protesters were trying to block, and they'd been told, don't block the driveway. Well, they start not only blocking the driveway, they start banging on the car. The guy panics, stomps his foot on the gas, and comes flying right through our line, right at me. And we all bail out of the way. There's people laying around on the ground, big open hole. Now the crowd wants to swarm through our line to go after this guy. We've got people behind me who are addressing this guy, trying to figure out what his deal is. And I was kind of faced with the whole rushing mob. And all I could do was just start just screaming at everybody, get back, get back, get back. And people were saying, oh, he hit me. And I said, everyone who got hit by the car, lie down on the ground. I'm going to get medics. Everybody else, stand the F back. And so that, that was a pretty tense moment where it really felt like things were out of control. And in the end, that's really what we're afraid of. We're afraid of losing control. As police officers, we have all these training and processes, and okay, in this situation, we're going to use these tactics. In this situation, we're going to use those tactics. When all those tactics go wrong and something unexpected happens, that's when we get kind of frightened. And it's never a good thing to frighten us. Like some people think, I'll just fight with the cops. All right. I bet you I can beat that cop. I bet you I can beat that guy in a fight. As I say, confirm you copy, attacking the cop is a bad plan, because you know what we do when we realize we've lost this fight? We shoot you, because we know if you knock us unconscious, you're going to take our gun and you're going to kill us and start killing other people. So the very last resort is you get shot. You can't win that fight. But we've been in these. We've all been in these situations where you're rolling around the ground with somebody that, I remember when I started, there was the great PCP rush where people would, they take too much of this stuff and walk around with the personality of Godzilla. And we'd all be getting thrown around like rag dolls, and it was literally like fighting a monster. Now, the person would wake up the next day with almost every bone in their body broken, but at that moment, they just were feeling no pain, and they were in total rage. So things like that where, tactics, like I had a guy in a store one time was doing that, and a bunch of people were grabbing him, trying to pull him down to the ground, and I got the bright idea, well, since the object of this thing here is to push him down to the ground, I'm going to climb up on this check stand, and I'm going to throw myself on top of him. And my force of my 300 pounds is come right down on top of this guy and force him to the ground. Instead, he caught me. He caught me like a feather and then threw me through a store window. So, those kinds of things where all the tactics and all the training and all the stuff, we don't really mind, necessarily going into the bad stuff. It's when the bad stuff goes wrong and we just lose control of the situation. That's what becomes the most terrifying thing in the job.
So with that, how has that shaped your identity in law enforcement? Just everything that you've been through.
Made me a control freak. It's made me somebody who's always in control of myself and my environment. I'm always aware of what's going on, but it's advantaged me a lot. I'm a very fast decision maker. I'm incredibly decisive. I assess situations very quickly. I get a little irritated sometimes. Sometimes a little hard to be around because I come in, I immediately realize what needs to be done. Okay, you go here, you go there, do that. Even when we're talking party planning, I mean, it's just, look, you do this, you do that. You go over here, pick this up, go over here. Now let's go. And well, wait, we haven't mentally caught up to this yet. Well, when you do, let me know. And so and of course you wind up. I am married, and very well my wonderful wife Leslie, and she's the finest human being on planet Earth, and she absolutely loves cops. And I can't tell you how many times I'm meeting someone for the first time. She's like, "Oh, this is my husband. He's a police officer." And I'm like, "No, give me time here. Let me do some behavioral analysis on this guy." Because at the very least, I'm going to wind up hearing about the traffic ticket he was written. And he didn't really think that he should be written a ticket because he was only going 70 to 25, and he thinks that it was the end of the month, and he thought the cop was trying to get his quota.
Yeah, I would think like the two things you never want to be introduced as, right, is a cop,
mm-hmm.
a pastor, priest, rabbi, somebody of
mm-hmm.
of religious, I guess origin or overseer, if you will. and maybe a politician. Those are probably the three things, and maybe a debt collector. We'll throw that in, because those guys are
debt
awful,
collector.
right? Debt collectors are the worst.
Yeah, or what about IRS agents? Oh, I work for the IRS.
Used car salesman, maybe even. I mean, there's so many. I'm a dental hygienist, as you were leading off with your story. Those are fun ones to introduce.
We always lie. We always lie. We'll either not answer or we'll lie. Sometimes one of the famous ones is we'll say we're garbage collectors. You know, which stems from the movie Scared Straight, where the one Billy Crystal's character is analyzing the cop job. It's like, yeah, sure, there's always plenty of trash, but if we didn't pick up the trash that's there, then the streets would be full of trash. And so, yeah, the garbage man kind of thing is something that we'll use a lot. But yeah, we tend to listen more than talk when we're around strangers. We tend not to volunteer too much, and somebody starts asking questions, we'll ask diversion questions and start getting them to open up about themselves some more before we're ever going to kind of let it out. But at the same time, I also think people know when they meet you, they know you got that demeanor. So, it can be tough, and you got to be careful. And it just never occurs to my wife that anybody would have any animosity towards the cops. But
that's because she's sweet and charming and amazing, as you already alluded to. So, that's probably why.
And as you well know, yeah, absolutely. So, yep.
So, law enforcement, has it cost you anything personally? I mean, I know sometimes there's, money for training and things of that nature, but I mean, anything personally that has affected you cost-wise?
Well, I mean, there's my health. I mean, my back is terrible. All cops' lower backs are blown. I mean, see, when they first came out with this whole gun belt idea, they said, well, look, we can't have all this weight just hanging on guys around a guy's waist. That's going to destroy their back. So I know, let's put a strap on it. We have a strap that'll go over the shoulder. Okay. Well, then that was around for a few years. And then somebody said, what's happening is these guys in fights, people are just grabbing onto that strap and they're throwing them around. So they said, okay, lose the strap. Well, then we were back to the original problem of this heavy gun belt around our waist, which was never got addressed again. And then throughout my entire career, that's just what we did. 35, 45 pounds around your waist all day long. And now all of our backs are just absolutely trashed. Our lower vertebrae are done. I have a friend of mine, he can't sit still. He's rail thin. He just has to keep walking to try to, as soon as he sits still, the swelling comes up and he starts getting the sciatic pains down his leg. So, so there's a big physical toll, as I alluded to earlier. My feet are destroyed, bad shoulders, bad knees, all that kind of stuff, which segues me into a brief sideshow thing about this new pension adjustments they're doing, where they're saying cops can't retire till they're 57. Let me tell you what that's going to mean. That's going to mean there's not going to be a cop on the street older than 45. Now, how do I get to there? Well, we will always have what's called a medical retirement option, where we retire 50% tax-free. Now, by the time we're 45, there is no cop on the street who could not pull a medical pension, period. Knees blown, back blown, shoulders blown, elbows blown, thrown through walls, thrown through windows, car crashes, all kinds of stuff. Every one of us can walk in. So the decision becomes, do we play hurt for 5 more years when it's 50 retirement? We think, yeah, I can do it. Service retirements are better than medical retirements, better benefits. So sure, I'll stick around till I'm 50. And then like I did, you stick around a couple more years to 52. But now imagine you're 45 years old. Your knee is killing you. Your back is killing you. And you can't retire for another 12 years? No, you're going to pull the pin. You're not going to have a cop older than 45 years old. They're all going to pull a medical. And medicals are the most expensive form of pension out there. So again, it's an inability to reason cause and effect, and it's really going to cause problems for us down the road.
Wow, that's disheartening, the fact that they're, putting that mandate on things, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, well, they're looking at it from a perspective of saving money on the pensions, but they're not realizing it's actually going to cost them a lot more. I mean, there are cops that work until 57. I probably could have done so. There's one cop I know about there who's actually 70 years old and he's still out on patrol. This guy was sworn in 1967. He's still out there working. People do it.
That's insane.
But it's absolutely insane. Yeah, I don't give names or agencies, but yeah,
sure,
he's out there. He's out there
to protect them. That's awesome.
There But yeah, there are people out there
Good
that are
for
doing
you.
it. There's lots of cops that work till they're 57, but
Yeah.
at 45, that 12 years away is going to look too far away. And I think a tremendous amount of cops are going to leave it at 45. That's if
your
we ever.
prediction, in your opinion?
Yeah, I do. And then, of course, right now we have the mass recruitment crisis that's going on. Every agency is in a constant state of hiring. We can't, we can't hire the numbers that we have positions for. They're open slots. If you ever wanted to be a cop, and you should be a cop, now's the time. You can pretty much call your shot as far as where you're going to work. Almost every agency out there. Because here's the other harmful thing about this. Oh, cops are all racist, right? Well, if you put that out there, why would a person who's not a racist want to go become a cop? All right, if you convince people that it's true, let me tell you what they should say to a black man growing up in South Central Los Angeles. They should say, you know what, grow up and be a cop. You think there's a problem with the way they're doing it? Go be one, okay? I guarantee you, let's say you grow up in South Central LA. LAPD would beg to hire you. LAPD would beg to hire you. You stay away from gangs, you stay away from drugs, you grow up with that street knowledge and awareness, LAPD would beg to hire you. All right, go be a cop. That should be the message. Join the force. Join up and
Stop
make it
being
better.
a problem and be part of the solution, right?
And I'll tell you, I have many friends who've done that, and I got to tell you, the way they get treated, especially when they're black. Well, actually, really only when they're black. Hispanics generally have some cultural respect there, but in the inner city, low income black areas, I have a very good friend of mine, black, became a cop because he grew up in that environment. He looked around and said, everyone says that drug dealer and the gangbangers are all so cool. I don't see them being cool. I think the cool guy is the cop. He's out there just helping people. So he grew up and became that, went out and worked those streets. They hated him. They called him a race traitor. And that's how those black cops get treated. And it's just a completely wrong message. If they want to stop selling pain medicine and start putting out the fire, they should be going around recruiting and saying, hey, go become a cop. Be a part of it. All right? Make it better. If these churches that will often go down to police stations and yell and scream at the cops, hey, how about this? Open the Bible for a minute and think, what would Jesus do? Go down with some signs. The cops are coming out of the station saying, God bless you. Thank you for your service. Be safe. We'll pray for you. Say that to all the cops as they're leaving the station. All right? You want to end the anger and the hostility? Stop being angry and stop being hostile. Don't sit there and be angry and hostile at a group of people. I mean, cops in high crime, mostly black city neighborhoods, there's streets they don't do car stops on. They don't care. If somebody's driving down the street 100 miles an hour with your kids playing in the street, they're not going to do a car stop on that street because everybody comes out of their house and surrounds the car. They're going to wind up with a riot. That's how angry people have become. And they've been this way for a long time. And all this gasoline they're pouring on the fire, that's not the solution. The solution is to become a part of the problem. If you don't like the way cops are doing their job, then go be a cop. Show us how you would do it.
I think that's true with anything, though, right? Is if you start having a problem with something and you're just creating more of a problem to it, complaining, not doing anything about it, I think at some point in time you have to stop complaining about it and start doing something about it. I think that's just across the board, right? I mean, because, again, even in a corporate environment where I'm from, my boss says to me all the time, don't bring me your problems, bring me the solution.
Well, yes, but I think it's much worse with us because look at how much money these folks are getting paid. All right, the Netflix contracts, the tennis shoe contracts, all the money that they're raking in. They're making a fortune to sit there and yelling and scream about the problem. It's a problem. There's a problem. It's a problem. It's a problem. Doing nothing to solve the problem. No inclination to solve the problem, but making an awful lot of money. I mean, what would all of these folks do if they couldn't sell America that cops are racist? What would they do? What would anybody pay them to do? Colin Kaepernick? People say, oh, he was kicked out of the NFL because he took a knee. No, his career was prolonged an extra season because he took a knee because the 49ers are not scared of firing him. Okay. And he took a knee because he wasn't going to get starting quarterback pay. All right. So he was throwing a little tantrum. He decided to do it during the national anthem. And then it got noticed. And so he came up with this, I just hate cops. And that just became his whole mantra. He prolongs this whole thing for another year. And then I actually wish a team would hire. I wish somebody in the NFL would hire Colin Kaepernick. Did you ever see the movie Ted, Neil?
With the teddy bear? No, I never saw
that. Okay,
No.
there's this hysterical bit. The teddy bear is supposed to go get a job and has no desire to get a job. So he goes to apply to work at a supermarket. And he's just as obnoxious as he can be. Just saying the most foul, crude, disgusting things to everybody. And then he comes across this store manager who says, I like the cut of your jib. No one else is coming here and talking to me like that. You're hired. And Ted's like, what's wrong with you? And he's constantly doing everything he can to get fired. And all this guy does is keep hiring him and promoting him. I think that's exactly what the skit would be with Colin Kaepernick. I mean, look what happened when they recently had the combine. It's like, hey, okay, well, we'll come look at you. 22 teams will come look at you. Really? Yeah, well, you run around screaming, yelling, and then we'll look at you, so we'll come look at you. Then what does he do? An hour before, I'm not going to be in that stadium. I'm going to be an hour away, so there. And then 17 decide to drive the hour. I mean, I picture somebody hiring him and him saying, well, you know what? I'm not going to wear a jersey. Well, that's some original out of the box thinking there, kid. They'll never see that coming. Well, I'm not going to touch a football. Oh, that's going to take them by surprise. You're a star. I mean, be like, what's wrong with you? I mean, the guy's doing everything in his power to not get hired by a team so he can run around making a fortune complaining that teams won't hire him.
No, I agree. I could go on Colin all day. I as a sports fan myself, I struggle with that. I struggle with that because the Seahawks, my team that I cheer for, they brought him in, and they didn't feel like he was a fit. Now, I might not be a good fit for a new job or a new position or a new company or new whatever. Does that mean that they're racist because they didn't hire me? No, it just means I wasn't a good fit. So are they bad for doing that? Is Seattle bad for doing that? Well, they were kind of vilified in a lot of respects because they didn't bring him in and sign him. But anyway, great joy in your job. Has there been any joy along the way?
Oh yeah. I got a phone call. I had this more than once, but one in particular I remember where a person called me up. He says, I don't know if you remember me, but you stopped me. I was in an alleyway drinking beers, and I was 17 years old. And instead of writing me a ticket or being a jerk, you really talked to me about life plans and getting back to sports analogy. I use this a lot. It's like, you got to look at how things you're doing right now are working in your life. Like, you got all the way to the Super Bowl because you're doing a great passing. Well, now you're passing the ball and it keeps getting intercepted. What do? That plan's not working. Let's run the ball. All right. You got to look at what's working. What you're doing is not working right now. And I talked to him at length, and he was 7 years after. He said, you totally changed my life that night. I joined the military. I've been doing, good stuff. And it just really got me thinking. So that kind of stuff always gave me a lot of joy. My favorite thing was when I had a hunch. I'd look at something and I'd think, I wonder if, and then you go and you start digging around based on that theory. And then, holy cow, it's true. This works. I actually figured this out. And then you solve this kind of stuff. And, that, like I said, I was always a detective. I was always doing the extra stuff, always looking into extra stuff and, getting a hunch, following that hunch, and it proves to be successful. And I bring the case home and I get the person in custody, especially when it starts off as, there's absolutely no, there's no way that anyone ever expected that this would be solved. It didn't have to be homicide. I mean, it could be. We had a dog case one time. This kid, he cleaned apartment complexes, and he had this dog, and it had a growth on its head. It was a little bulldog puppy, and he left it in a cage while he cleaned up the apartment complex. And while he was out of sight, somebody stole his dog, and it hit the media, and the media got in an uproar about this poor guy's dog, and it went to the chief's office, and the chief got all antsy about it and came in, and there was one detective who was on it, and he was like, I don't know, the dog's missing, what can we do? And then they got upset and they gave the case to me, and I was like, do something. So I asked around a whole bunch of questions, and I find out, this one guy who lives down the street, his brother, we think he had a dog like that. Find out who that brother is. Well, he worked for a transportation company in the county. Okay, go talk to them. Oh yeah, he's on a route, we'll call him back in. Sit down, I interview him. And he's initially, I don't know anything about it. I don't know who said that. And I'm like, oh, geez, bummer. I thought I had a lead here. But I took it next level. I said, hey, look, guy, come on, you found a dog. Okay, don't let's not make this into a serious crime here. You just found a dog. So what? That's all it is. Yeah, he found a dog. He gets back to the owner. So what? Oh, well, okay. Actually, I want him giving it to this lady. Oh yeah, she's a friend. I just gave it to her. Oh, all right. Where's the dog? Well, the dog turned out to be on the border, the Mexican border. She lived in Imperial County. You could see Mexico about 100 yards away from where she lived. So I go all the way down there, get the dog. Find out, actually, what this guy did was he was walking around a swap meet up in L.A. with the dog on a leash with a for sale sign. Told the lady it was a high-breed dog and sold it to her for $2,000. And that's how we still had her number of information, is she still owed him some money on this dog. Well, he just made this into a felony. So what I do, I bring the dog back. I call up. I always work well with the media. I called up the local news network. I said, hey, why don't you be at this complex at this time, go interview the kid, and ask him, do you think you ever get your dog back, as I'm walking up behind him and handing him the dog. And we did that live on air. We handed him his dog back, and that was fun. And then the guys were going to say, well, now what do we do? So now we're going to go arrest Mr. Shuttle Driver. So find out Mr. Shuttle Driver isn't there anymore. I tell them the company what he did. They go, well, he's fired. Okay. Here he lives out with his fiancée way the heck out on the far end of Riverside. Now we're talking near the Arizona border. We have a saying in detectives, no drive too far in a company car. We drive all the way out where I meet his fiancée. He's not home. I tell her what he did. She says, that's it. I'm divorcing him. The parents say, that's it. He's out of the house. She said, I'll call him and ruse him to get him to come back here, but you have to let me talk to him. Fair deal. He shows up. I hook him up. He's in the back of the car. She comes up and says, it's off. You're dead to me. I never want to see you again. So now this guy, he's lost his job. He's lost his house. He's lost his fiancée. And it turned out he was kind of a gangbanger. You know, he was a guy who prayed like he was a nice guy, but he was really a jerk. And the whole way down, he's calling me names and calling me out and chipping at me. I said, dude, you're a puppy thief. You can't hurt my feelings. Stop. And he wouldn't stop. I said, okay, fine. I called the media. Hey, want to do a perp walk? Be at the station this time. You'll see me walk the guy into the jail. You can film it. He said, I have one rule. You have to call him the puppy thief. And sure enough, there he was on the news that night. The puppy thief in custody. I mean, that was fun for me. That kind of stuff was fun. And yes, of course, the more serious cases, the homicides and things I worked, I can't really talk about for obvious reasons. But that kind of just having a hunch, having a thought, following it up wherever it went, not letting laziness block me, letting my imagination run free, follow this lead, follow that lead. You start off with just a little string, you start tugging on it, and then there's the thrill of, oh, wow, this thread is real. I can really do this. I can actually put this case down. So that was the joy that I got out of the job.
Yeah, I think that's great stuff. I love the puppy story. You know, some people would be like, really? We taxpayers paid for him to find a dude's puppy? But yeah, it's legit. It's an important thing. So
well, by selling it for $2,000, he made it a grand theft.
Oh, did he really? Because of the price?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything over $950, that's grand theft, buddy. That's a felony. And with his criminal history, he did some time.
I bet he did.
And you know what? The thing is, with the growth on the puppy's head, untreated, it could have wound up being fatal for the puppy. Believe it or not, you know, you say how people say, oh, dogs. It's so much easier. It was always so much easier for me to get search warrants, for me to get cooperation from judges and the DA for dog cases. I mean, everyone's an animal lover. I mean, because human beings, you know, maybe they put themselves in that situation, but but again, you know, there's a whole bunch of other cases, on and on cases. I mean, you know, a prostitute who was kidnapped off the streets up in Oakland, basically was enslaved for over a week. I wound up using some creativity and imagination to catch those suspects and got them to completely confess. Full confessions was a big, big thing for me. People used to joke, you know, they'd like, oh, Mr. Full Confessions, not suggesting I was any better at getting confessions, but just I was a very dork about it when I did. You know, I just would be so excited that I get a full confession. You know, that's the ultimate sales job, man. I mean, these kidnappers who gave me a complete confession, they pled out to 75 years. I mean, it's one thing to sell a car to somebody, but how do you sell to somebody after reading the speech saying you probably ought not to talk to me, to then turn around and get that person to confess things to you that will result in their going to prison for the rest of their life? And that mind game, the challenge of it, that when it worked, when I was successful, that was always a great thrill. I mean, love to tell you exactly what the tricks are, but I don't want to educate people.
Yeah, we don't want to give them
to
a bone to fight against law enforcement for sure. No tricks.
Yeah.
No tricks here.
Yeah.
We're not going to fool
I don't-
anybody. Yeah.
Right. I don't want you to know how I'm going to do it. But when
No,
I
of
get
course
done
not.
with you, when I get done with you without threats, coercion, or even coming anywhere near a violation of constitutional rights, I'm going to get you to tell me everything, absolutely everything that you did and how you did it.
So, Paul, I want to kind of wrap things up with this, maybe one last question, if you're willing.
Mhm.
Now, I know for I would imagine as law enforcement, you had to overcome a lot of failure, a lot of frustration, a lot of disappointment. I mean, that's just kind of in any job, but in your job specifically, I mean, you put a guy in prison, or you get a case against him, and then the proverbial, he's out 48 hours later or 2 years later, you know what I mean? And then you're right back at it again. I mean, how do you counteract that?
When you're in a bad spot, you move on and find another spot, find another way. But yeah, that stuff did eat me up, and it was a part of why I retired. The state of California passed this Prop 47 that basically released 26,000 inmates from prison. And of course, crime went through the roof. And it turned out, surprisingly, all this time, crime was being committed by, criminals. And they actually called that the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Act, by the way. And ironic because it greatly affected this particular guy. I'll use just his first name, Christopher. Now, Christopher was a guy that I had arrested numerous times for numerous school burglaries. This was just his thing. Like, we'd file 48 at a time. And I found out there was a school in my city that was a school for severely mentally impaired kids. And they had just gotten, and they don't get a lot of money. The kids aren't going to graduate high school. They don't really get a lot of, that's all private donations. And they had just donated to this school 24 iPads for these kids to help them socialize and develop some basic functions. And they'd no sooner been taken out of the box when somebody went and stole them all, burglary. Well, I thought at first it couldn't be Chris, because I thought he was in jail. The reason I thought he was in jail was that he'd been released on probation for doing I think it was 64 different school burglaries, and immediately while on probation committed another school burglary and got arrested by another agency in the county. So I thought, reasonably so, he's still in custody. But I come to find out, no, they bailed him out. And I called his probation officer and I said, how could you have? Why would you let a guy go out on bail when he was arrested for the very thing he's on probation for? Well, Prop 47 turned that into a nonviolent crime, and we can't violate people's probation for nonviolent crimes. And I said, wait a minute, this is what he's on probation for. I mean, how could that not be a violation of his probation, doing exactly what he's on probation for? Well, that's just the way it works. Okay, great. So where is he? Well, we don't know. Are you supervising this guy at all? Well, he says he's homeless, lives in a car. I know that's not true. He's probably staying in a motel somewhere, but I don't know where that is. So I find a court date that he's due to show up for. And the DA was almost, we're going to continue it. I said, no, you're not going to continue it. He's going to be there. And I put a surveillance team on, and we followed him around. And we took him to a storage unit. And we went to the storage unit. There was all 24 of the laptop, or the iPads, as well as the stolen property from probably, I'm going to say, somewhere around 24 different school burglaries. I mean, the guy had only been out for a week, so hadn't really had a chance to do that much. So back in he goes. 6 months later, the DA says, good news, he pled out to 5 years. Well, okay, state of California, 5 years. I guess I'm going to take that as a win. And I said, well, let me know when he's going to be out, because we need to follow this guy around. And she says, oh, he's out now. Wait, how's he out now? Well, with good time and half time and partial credits, and then the judge did a suspended sentence. So we told him if he just pled, because the guy never pled guilty to anything, because he was never actually sorry about anything. The guy was a complete sociopath. And he goes, yeah, well, we released him. And all he had to do was say he was guilty, and we told him he could go free. And I emailed her back and I said, you know, do you hear that sound? That's the sound of glass breaking all across Orange County. And I got up, I walked across the street, and I turned in my retirement paperwork because I just thought at this point, what is the point? Why are we going through all this stuff? Why are we doing all this stuff when they're not going to get locked up? I mean, right now up in San Francisco, I don't know if you're aware, the district attorney of San Francisco is a guy who his parents were in prison for murdering cops, and he was raised by the Weather Underground. All right, he was raised by a domestic terrorist organization, but an ACLU attorney his entire life, hates cops, and has essentially said the only people I want to go to prison are cops. And what does he do? They elect him to be the district attorney. Now, okay, you're a liberal, and you feel sorry for criminals. The poor criminals. Okay, all right. But can't we all, you would think, at least agree the one person who should not like criminals so much is the district attorney? So I don't know why anybody is a cop in San Francisco. I have no idea. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. And yeah, that was a big frustrating thing for me. And it was a big stressor to me. And I just said, okay, I guess, you know, that whole retirement thing, fine, done. And that was probably one of the big things why I turned in my paper.
I would think as law enforcement, that would be the most frustrating thing, is the fact that you put in the hours, you put in the effort, you talk about the strand, you're talking about, you know, the working with maybe a button in a sense, or a needle in a haystack, and you find the criminal and you do all the due diligence, do it right, by the book, whatever, to put them away, only to come to find out that they don't serve the time, they get off on a technicality, whatever that may be. That to me would be the most frustrating and disappointing part of it.
Yeah, it really was. And, you know, there were certain DAs that we always knew were just Monty Hall DAs who really were afraid to put trials on. They just were afraid to go to court. And they would take the most ridiculous plea just so they wouldn't have to go to trial. We had one DA who was famous for that, did that to a church burglar. Now, we'd arrested this guy. He got out on bail. He skipped bail, hunted him down, arrested him again. I put back out on bail. He skipped bail again, hunted him down again. And then this DA pleaded him out to a no contest, which means I'm not saying I'm guilty. I'm just not saying I'm not guilty, with no consequence whatsoever, even no restitution. And she says, well, he wants to join the Army, and I think that's what's best for him. And I'm thinking, one, you're the district attorney. It's not, when are you concerned with what's in the best interest of a church burglar? That's not your side of this issue here, you know? But we have to understand there has to be somebody who's anti-crook, okay? We can't, because there's a reason predators are so good at what they do. I mean, throughout nature, there's all these predators that camouflage themselves or do certain things that draw the prey to them, okay? We look at these biker gangs. Oh, they're so cool. We've got these TV shows. Oh, they're so great. Or we look at all these, you know, the rap star gangsters and all that stuff. You know why there's so many gangster rappers is it's a money laundering scheme for drug dealing. You know, they pretend they sold so many albums, and really that's just how they manufacture an income stream for all the money they're really making dealing drugs. So, and everyone gets drawn into these guys. And yes, I get it. It's not like fighting fire. Okay, firemen are great. Everyone loves fire because what's fire doing? It's burning things, so put out fire. Fire doesn't have a face. Fire doesn't have a mother. Fire doesn't have this history. Well, he's such a nice fire. You know, he used to just hang out at campgrounds and keep people warm. Doesn't have anybody advocating for him. All right? Criminals do have a human face. They're going to have a crying mom. They're going to have a sad story. But it's all part of the manipulation. They're not cool. We have to deal with it, whether we want to or not. And we've got to step back and just let the cops do their job.
Well said. So, Paul, we typically play a game at the end of our show. Are you good with games? I mean, we're not going to try to fool you today by any means.
Okay.
Trying to work that in some more. So, all right. So I have a die.
I got it.
I have a die in my hand. So one die, and we ask these random 6 questions to end the show. It's a game we like to call Senseless. So here we go. I'm rolling on your behalf because you're sitting in an amazing lake and working hard right now. So here we go. Number 6.
I have to say, this is feeling a little D&D here. I mean, do I get how many hit points do I have?
I don't know. I don't play D&D, so I you know, Garrett. If Garrett, my executive producer, was here, he would know. But sadly, Garrett is not here today.
Okay.
So, Garrett.
Okay. First question.
So here we go. So I rolled for you because you're not here, like I said. So you got a number 6, which is my favorite question, and I'm dying to know this question. So it's kind of maybe destined that you got this one. So here it is.
Yeah,
Number
because
6.
it's not like you could game this or anything and say that it was a 6. When
No,
it
I
wasn't
promise.
really
I
a
could
6.
send you a pic. Do you want me to send you a picture of it? I mean, wow.
See,
Nobody's ever
now-
questioned my integrity on the roll, Paul. This is very cop of you. Like, never mind. That goes down the road.
All right, go ahead.
So here we go. Number 6, and that's this question. You get to have dinner with one person, dead or alive. Who is it? And where are you going? And maybe what are you going to ask them?
Well, I would probably say Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart is somebody I got to meet one time, and now it's not
Now,
because he's an actor.
some of my listeners might not know who Jimmy Stewart is, so you got to help.
Well,
them
then
out.
some of your listeners need to friggin' open up their video library. So all right. Little thing about Jimmy Stewart. So you may know Jimmy Stewart from some classic movies
It's
like
a Wonderful
Harvey and The Wonderful Life, which you see every Christmas.
That's my favorite one.
Here's what's fascinating to me about Jimmy Stewart. After winning an Academy Award, so he's a big deal. He wasn't an up-and-coming actor. He was there. Academy Award-winning actor. He quit being an actor to go join the Army Air Corps to be a bomber pilot. Now, here's what's really interesting about this. He did it before Pearl Harbor. He did it before there was a war. Before there was a war, he walked away from all of that to become a bomber pilot. Because he saw it coming. He knew it was imminent. And he had already was an air aficionado and actually had a private school that was teaching advanced airplane techniques to people in the Army. So he quits. That's it. That's nice. Yeah, I'm a successful actor. Instead, I'm going to go be a bomber pilot for the Army because the Air Force wasn't established yet. So off he goes. They want him to sell bombs. He says, nope, I'm a bomber pilot. He joins up. He becomes a bomber pilot. He flies his 25 missions, which was the limit. Can't keep flying at 25 missions. He then becomes a flight commander where he's now planning the bombing mission. And what he used to do would to show his crews how much faith he had in the missions that he planned off book, he'd go on the mission with them. Guys, I believe in this thing. I'm not sending you off there. And they're like, wait, you've already flown your 25. Well, nobody needs to know. We don't know today. We don't know. Jimmy Stewart may have flown more bombing missions in World War II than any other human being because he used his celebrity and his power and his rank to go off and do this. Now, keep in mind, if you don't know anything about military history, I'm a big military history geek, the American forces always bombed during the day. The British bombed at night because the American forces were trying to blow up factories and ammo depots. The Brits were only trying to bomb Germany. I mean, they didn't care. We were over Germany when we let the bombs go. Good enough for us. So, and they had reason to be that hateful. Obviously, Germany was bombing them. But we went during the day, which made our missions way scarier and way more dangerous. After the war is over, Jimmy Stewart remains now he becomes a reserve in what would then become the Air Force. He stayed in and retired a lieutenant colonel. He even flew a bombing mission over Vietnam. All while he's this famous actor guy. Now, I don't care about famous actor guys. I couldn't care less. But to have that opportunity to just do that and then instead choose to be an American hero, to me, that's that. Now, I did meet him. Years ago, I was a security guard working for a security company up in the Bel Air area. And I used to have this 1965 theory on celebrity status, where if you were a celebrity before 1965, you lived in a normal house, someone could go up, knock on your door, you answer the door. He lived across the street from Lucille Ball. They were both the same. I literally went to his house. He was going on vacation to check on him. Knocked on the door, and he opens the door. He opens it so fast, he couldn't even look to the people. Well, hello there, young man. And then we start talking, and he's walking me around the house and telling me what he wants to do. And just a great guy. But would I have loved to sat down, had dinner with him, and really pick his brain? Didn't know as much about him then as I had in later years when I researched him. So wish I could have spent more time. Fascinating true American.
What's one question you would ask him at this dinner? And where do you guys go to eat? I know you have some great restaurants in your area. I mean, Pepino's one of them, but
back
we'll
to
shout
that.
out to
Well, back to-
Pepino's. But
Oh, I'm sure we'd find some place. Hell, I'd want to sit in his living room.
yeah, have him make you something maybe.
Yeah. See if he cooked me some burgers or something. I could go for that. Geez, what would I want to ask him? I don't believe in asking direct questions. I think I would just say something along the lines of, so you quit to become an Army air pilot. Tell me more about that. And just sit back and just let him talk and not worry about directed questions and just hear the stories and be in awe of truly a true amazing individual, just to hear whatever he had to say.
You know, from the sound of it, he really did have a wonderful life. Sorry, I couldn't help that. I couldn't help that.
No, it's okay. You got to throw in the zinger. There you go.
There's a little zinger. So Paul, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. You gave us so much good insight, so much good information, and I just want to say thanks for coming on. So Paul's gonna hang out for a little bit, but guys, I just want to encourage you. Next time you're confronted or interact with a police officer, maybe keep in mind the fact of they have to go home to a family member too, and sometimes they're kind of scared. Sometimes they're kind of not sure what's gonna happen. Keep that in mind. Keep that perspective in mind. And remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. I, of course, am your host, Neil Matthews. On behalf of Garrett and myself, we want to invite you back here next week, of course, on Wednesday, as we try on other people's shoes. Thank you so much for joining us on Other People's Shoes. Of course, you know I'm your host, Neil Matthews. I want to thank you so much for joining us this week. My guest, Paul, gave us some amazing insight into the mind and the workings and the day-to-day kind of sort of operations of a police detective. To me, fascinating stuff, really cool to sit with him. Shout out to my favorite cousin who loves Paul very much, and so do I. So it was great to kind of catch up with Paul. Speaking of catching up with people, we got a chance to catch up with, in my mind, a really amazing blogger, and here's a little sneak peek of next week's episode.
And instead of allowing those things to shame me and to quiet me, I wanted to use them to kind of empower other people. You know, it's not meant, our hardships and our failures are not meant to keep us down. They're meant to learn from and to expand our mindsets, expand our growth. And there's a certain point where you finally just say, you know what? It doesn't matter what you say. It matters what he says, and he's already said that I'm forgiven. So why am I allowing myself to sit here and suffocate in this any longer?
That's right. We're going to be sitting with a blogger next week. Not a logger. I know we're in Oregon, but a blogger. She's an amazing woman, and she's going to tell her story next week. And I'm going to tell you right now, ladies specifically, this really is a message and an idea that you really need to rally behind. Gentlemen, we can rally to this as well, but ladies specifically, this episode really has you in mind. And me as a male, I want to give this gift to you, to my lady audience out there. By the way, if you'd like to stay in touch with us and hear more episodes, past, present, and future episodes, that of course can be done at opspodcast.com. That, of course, is where past, present, and future episodes do live. And, of course, if you'd like to in any way give to the show, we, of course, are a nonprofit show. We, of course, would love that if you'd like to partner with us financially in any way. We've linked our PayPal account down below. And, of course, we encourage you to give, and we will get the tax information to you. By the way, if you'd like to follow us on social media, that can be done at OPS Podcast Show. Of course, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are on the Twittersphere, so please, of course, tweet us, follow us, like us on Instagram as well. We do post daily, so check those out if you're interested in that. And, of course, if you'd like to leave us a voicemail or send us a text, because, you know, Garrett does an amazing job here, and we'd love to give him some support, right? That, of course, can be done on our hotline. It is a text-friendly and voicemail-friendly phone number. So here it is, 203-548-7463. That's 203-548-7463. It also spells shoe at the end. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Again, on behalf of Garrett and myself, guys, stay safe out there. It's been a crazy couple of months, hasn't it? And, of course, we hope you have a great week as well. And again, join us next Wednesday as we try on other people's shoes.